Hello everyone and welcome to Merlin's Manor as I go through our 25 games of Christmas. And what this series is about is basically my wife picked 25 games for us, as well as 25 games that we can play with our family, put those all into an advent calendar, and we're picking out a piece of paper each day that has a family game and a game for me and my wife to play together. And we're playing through that, and I'm giving some mini reviews along the way of each game that we play. So let's go ahead and jump right on into day one. And on day one we played Welcome To and Red Cathedral. Welcome To is the game that we played with our family. It's a fun little flip and write game that is easy to learn, not too complex, but it takes a lot to kind of master the puzzliness of this game. It's one of my favorite flip and write games. I rate it a 9 out of 10. It's just a lot of fun trying to score points in different ways. It's kind of a point salad-y type thing where you have different ways that you can focus on getting points, from putting things with a pool to getting trees and all kinds of different things that you can do, as well as bonus cards that you're kind of trying to get there before others to get the highest points from those. It's a very fun flip and write game where you're basically just putting house numbers in sequence and taking the benefit along with each one to outscore your opponents. Then there's Red Cathedral. This game is a very interesting rondel mechanism. Really kind of enjoy this. We haven't really played this enough, but I really enjoy the rondel in it. It's fun to try and figure out how you're going to get the resources, and sometimes you get a little frustrated because nothing's going to lead the way you want to. Not quite sure you want to take the hit on your prestige to try and get re-rolls, and so how are you going to work around those? It's a lot of fun as you try to compete to build up the cathedral and to be the one to claim the ornamentations on different areas, as well as figure out which ones you can kind of get ahead and build, and a lot of fun. And so I highly recommend it. I rate it 8.5 out of 10. So for day two, the family game we played was Throw Burrito. And the game that was for my wife and I to play, but we also included our youngest daughter in it because she wanted to play it, was Marvel United. Let's go ahead and talk about Throw Burrito first. Now, Throw Burrito is definitely a family-oriented game. It doesn't have a whole lot of strategy to it. It's just a bunch of silly fun. And what you're basically doing in this game is you're following the main mechanic of the card game Spoons, where you have a hand of cards and you're discarding one card to your left and then picking up a card from your right. And you're trying to make a set of 3 of the same thing. When you do that, you put it down and you draw back up to your hand of 5 and continue going. Now, at some point in the game, somebody is going to get either 3 brawl cards, 3 duel cards, or 3 war cards. And what's going to happen there is you're going to declare whichever one it is. If you declare that it is a brawl, the person to your left and right are going to try and grab one of the soft burritos, and they're going to try and throw it at the other person. And whoever gets hit by the burrito first is going to get a wound token, which is basically -1 points. And so then you just go back to keep doing the same thing again. And then, of course, if somebody does a duel, you're going to have that person going to choose 2 people to stand back to back, and they're going to take 3 steps forward and then turn and try and throw the burrito at the other person first. And then the other one that can be called is a war. And what happens in that situation is everybody except the person declaring it is now in a war. They're trying to grab one of the 2 burritos and toss it at someone. Whoever gets hit then also gets that wound token. And you continue play until all the wound tokens have been given out. And then whoever has the most sets after you take off each of the wound tokens is going to win that round. Whoever is able to win, if somebody wins 2 rounds, they win the game. If they don't win the second round, then there's a duel off between the 2 people that both won a round, and whoever wins that duel goes ahead and wins the game. And so that is Throw Burrito. It's some silly fun. I rate it a 6 out of 10 because it is kind of just more of a silly family game, but at the same time, it is enjoyable. Now, Marvel United. I rate Marvel United somewhere between a 6 and a 6.5 right now. That may go up. It's one of these games that I was really excited about when I first heard about it, and I'd heard all the hype about it, but it was really, I believe, overhyped. It's not a game that really lives up to what everybody's been saying, in my opinion. It's a lot more of a simple game than I was expecting going into it. A lot easier to win than I expected. And so, and the only way you kind of make it more difficult is by getting rid of one of your cards. And I don't really like that system of how it makes it more difficult. I'd rather the actual bosses themselves being more difficult. Now, we did wind up losing in our gameplay this time around to the Green Goblin, who is the hardest one I think we've played so far, just because of the fact that he keeps adding in these different schemes, and it makes it a lot more difficult there to win, since you have to be taking those out almost every round, getting rid of one of those. And so he was actually a little bit more difficult than the rest of the ones we've played. So far I've played 7 games. 3 of them were with just the base game. A couple of them were with X-Men. One of them was with just the Spider-Verse, and then the last one we played was the Spider-Verse and X-Men combined. And so, as I said, I may rate this a little bit higher as we get more gameplays going on, getting a little bit more mixing up of the different versions of the game. But as it stands right now, it just didn't live up to the hype for me. And so right now I've got around 6.5. It's fun, but not exactly what I want what I expected out of the game. Okay, on day 3, we played Tiny Epic Galaxies and Project L. Now, Project L is a game that my kids really requested a lot when we first got it. It's still one they enjoy very much. It's a simple polyomino placement game where you are going to have these different puzzle boards that you're going to try to be filling in with different Tetris-shaped pieces. And at the beginning, you're going to try to fill in some of these boards that don't give you any points, but they do give you pieces and are simple to fill in. Later on, you're going to be able to upgrade to fill in some of these ones that both give you pieces and points. And this is one of the more complex ones, the bigger ones that gives you a lot of points. There are some that give you between 1 and 4 points as well, which are a little bit smaller of a puzzle to fill in. And on your turn, you're going to do 3 actions. One action you can do is to gain a puzzle. Another action you can do is to gain a puzzle piece, a one-shaped piece. You can also do an action to upgrade a piece to the next level. And you can do an action to place a puzzle piece. And so those are the main actions you can do, but there's also one special action you can do once per turn. And this encourages you to get multiple puzzles in front of you, because what you can do is you can place one piece on each puzzle that's in front of you, as many as you want to do. If you don't have the right amount of pieces to do all of them, you can choose to do 2 or 3 of them. But that's very powerful, because normally you're spending one of your 3 actions just to place one piece. But with that action, you can go ahead and place 3 or 4 puzzle pieces at once with one action. And so it kind of gives you this kind of push and pull to how much are you going to try and get puzzles in front of you and try and spread yourself out, and how much you're going to focus on individual puzzles. And so it's a fun game to try and figure out how you can most efficiently finish these puzzles to be able to score more points than your opponents by the end of the game. So I really enjoy this simple puzzle game. So I rate Project L a 7 out of 10 for the fun, simple puzzle game that it is. Moving on now to Tiny Epic Galaxies. This is a game I also rate a 7 out of 10. And in Tiny Epic Galaxies, you are trying to claim various planets by orbiting them and moving along a track until you get to the end of the track, and you are then able to claim that planet. You also get points by moving up a tech track of sorts where you are trying to advance, and you get multiple benefits from that. Part of it is victory points, part of it is getting new ships, and part of it is getting more dice to roll on your turn. And so you're going to want to move along that track as quickly as possible, but you do have to get resources to spend in order to be able to do that. One of the neat things about Tiny Epic Galaxies is that it has this follow mechanic that keeps you active on other people's turns, because you can spend a culture resource in order to follow the dice action that they did. And so if they took an action where they're moving a ship to a planet, you can then say, I want to follow that, and you can move a ship to a planet as well. Or any other actions that they do can be followed. And so it's really kind of neat that it keeps you involved in between turns as long as you have that culture to spend. And so this is a fun, simple game, really quick game. I recommend it. So on day 4, we played Calico and Libertalia. Calico being the family level game that we played. This is a game that my youngest daughter enjoys very much. It's got a very kind of puzzly feel to it, as you are basically drafting these tiles that have different colors and patterns on them. You're trying to get colors grouped together in a group of 3 in order to score points that way. Trying to get patterns in a certain way to attract cats to your quilt. You've got 3 different goal tiles on your quilt that you are trying to get a certain pattern or colors around it. It might be 3 of one pattern, 3 of another pattern, and then 3 of that color or another color to get points. And so you are trying to work out how you can get these tiles placed a certain way. And so you got all these different types of things you're trying to work towards. but at the same time, you're probably not going to accomplish all of it, so you kind of have to balance what you're going to chase after in order to score the most points. It can be a bit frustrating towards the end of the game if you're not getting the tiles that you need, but I still think it's a lot of fun to try and puzzle out how you can most optimize what you are given. And so that is Calico. It's a game that I rate 7.5 out of 10. And if you want to check out another video, I'll link it at the end of this video, of Calico versus Cascadia, because they have a very similar type of feel to them. They're both games that I enjoy very much, and so I highly recommend you check that out at the end. The other game we played was Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. This is a game that Stonemaier Games has remade from the original Libertalia. They've changed the artwork to be much brighter, and they've changed up the mechanisms a little bit along the way as well, but kept the same basic feel of the game as far as the way it plays. So what you're basically going to do in this game is everybody's going to get the same 6 cards, and how you play those cards, what order you play those cards, is going to make the big difference in who's able to win the game. And so you're going to try and figure out what other people are going to play, trying to read the room a little bit there to try and outplay them. And there's going to be different things that you are going to get based on your character's power. It's going to go starting from the lowest numbered card going higher. You are going to get to activate your daytime power, and then on the other way back, people are going to activate their nighttime power as well as take a loot token from the board. And so you have to try and plan out, are you going to try and be the first to get a loot token that day, or are you going to save your ability to get the first choice of loot tokens for a later day? And exactly how you're going to, when you're going to use your daytime powers. Also, when your character comes back, sometimes they have a nighttime power that they're able to use if they're on your ship. And so kind of work in where you're going to try and get those out. If you can get those early in a round, you can go ahead and take more advantage of those nighttime powers. And then each day you're going to get a new set of 6 cards, and you may have played different cards. You're going to have a couple left over at the end of the first round, and then you're going to have another one left over at the end of the next round. And so by the end of the game, you're going to have hopefully a slightly different variation of cards than the rest of your opponents because you played a little bit differently. And the order you're going to play them is going to make a big difference on whether you're going to outscore your opponents or not. And ultimately, you're trying to get the most loot through your different abilities and the different loot tokens that you pick up. I rate Libertalia Winds of Galecrest an 8 out of 10. Okay, on day 5, my wife and I played Cartographer's Heroes, and for the family game, we played Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Now, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, based on the Disney ride, is definitely a family-weight game. It gives a nice introduction to deck building. It makes it a lot more simple than a lot of other deck building games out there, as you don't have to focus so much on being able to afford to buy cards. Whenever your locomotive card comes up, you just get one of the 3 cards available and add them to your deck. And so it's a fairly simple introduction there. You also have different upgrades that you can purchase to be able to give you different abilities that are going to help you throughout the game. And then you're basically going around trying to mine ore and gold nuggets to be able to get points and or coins from those. At first you're going to be getting the coins to buy those upgrades, and then as you go along you're going to be focused more on spending those for points or to get town shares, which will give you kind of some mystery points there. And so it's very light game, easy to get into, easy to teach kids, and so it's a great family game because of all of that. And in Cartographer's Heroes, I rate an 8 out of 10. This is a fun little flip and write game where you are going to flip over a card that's going to give you some sort of shape or a couple different shapes that you can choose one to draw into your map. And you have a terrain or two that you can choose from. And so you're going to look at that card and decide, do I want this terrain or that terrain? Do I want this shape or that shape? And then you're going to find a place to draw it onto your board. And there's going to be different goal cards along the way that you're going to score. During the first round, you're going to score the first 2 goal cards, the A and B. During the second round, you're going to score B and C. Third round, C and D. And then the final 4th round, you're going to score D and A. And so you're going to have to try and figure out, am I going to want to focus on scoring the later ones and getting things ready for that? Or am I going to go right ahead and try and score early points? You're also going to get coins along the way, which are an ongoing scoring benefit. You get coins either by drawing certain shapes onto your board that are smaller shapes, but they give you that coin, or you are going to surround mountains to get coins. And those are going to be a point for each one that you have, but you collect those along the way. And so the 3 that I got in the first round will carry over to the second round. If I get 2 more, I'll have 5 total. That's going to give me 5 points. Now, along the way also, you're going to have different monsters that your opponent is going to be allowed to draw somewhere where they think it's going to most get in your way of scoring points. And so when that monster comes up, they're going to draw that in. But also with the heroes mode, you get to add in some heroes sometimes, which are going to be able to take out those monsters. And so it's a fun little polyomino type game where you're actually drawing those polyominoes onto your map, trying to score points for meeting certain goals. Okay, on day 6, we played another couple polyomino games, New York Zoo and 10 Penny Parks. Now, New York Zoo is the one originally we were going to play with our family, but it wound up just being the wife and I that wanted to play it that night. But it is a light, easy to learn and play game that anybody can get into. And what you're basically trying to do in this game is you are trying to fill up your zoo with different enclosures and concessions. And so what you're going to be doing on your turn is you're going to move this little elephant piece to a space that's going to either give you animals to put into your zoo or give you a polyomino piece that you can place down into your zoo. If you take a polyomino piece, you're going to have some animals that you can move into there. You can only move the same type of animal into a space. If you have animals to put in, you're going to go ahead and grab that and you're going to put animals in there. Otherwise, you will have to go after animals on one of the spaces that gives you animals. And it gives you 2 animals that you will be able to get into your zoo. You can either put them into an enclosure straight away, or you can put them into a housing area awaiting to be able to put into a zoo enclosure later on. Or if you don't want the 2 that are there, you can take one of your choice. And so you are basically going around, you are getting these different enclosures, putting these animals into your zoo. Once you fill an enclosure with animals, you are then able to turn all those animals in, keep one into your house section, and then you will be able to get a concessions, which concessions, there's 2 different types. Well, there's different shapes of concessions, but there are some that are huge areas that are going to fill up big amounts of space that you want to try and grab early on before others get the opportunity to get those. And then there are small ones later on. They're going to help you fill in those tiny little gaps that you're not going to be able to fill in with enclosures. And so by filling your enclosures with animals, you are able to claim those pieces to be able to fill in bigger spaces and then later fill in those tiny spaces. So it's kind of you have to work out the strategy between trying to get enclosures and trying to get animals into your zoo that you're able to be able to turn in later. And also, as you're going around this rondelle kind of system, you're going to pass up areas that are going to allow for breeding of the animals. And so when you pass that, if you have 2 of that animal in one of your enclosures, you're able to make it, add 2 or more of that animal, you're going to be able to add an extra animal into that enclosure. And you can do that up to 2 times for that animal. And so it's this constant push and pull between putting out enclosures and getting those animals into your zoo to be able to get those concessions. And so it's a quick, fun little puzzle type game where you are trying to be the fastest to fill your zoo. New York Zoo, I rate a 7.5 out of 10. Now, 10 Penny Parks is another polyomino game that I really enjoy. I actually rate this one a 9 out of 10. It's a lot of fun being able to put together your theme park here. And what you're basically going to be doing is you are going to be purchasing these different theme park rides that you're going to be able to put into your theme park. And those rides are going to be different shapes that you're going to have to try and figure out how to fit onto your board. And you've got this added challenge of some spaces have trees on them that you're either going to have to try and go around, or you're going to have to go to a space with your worker to clear out trees. And it's a worker placement game, and you only have 3 workers per round, or 4 if you manage to get an extra worker. And so it's very limited what you're able to do, and so you have to be very efficient in trying to get these things done. And so you get these different theme park rides down, and you can't have any rides adjacent to one another, and so you have to be mindful of that. And when you put these theme park rides into your park, you are going to be getting different symbols that are going to allow you to move up on one of 3 different tracks that are going to give you different benefits if at the end of the round you are the leader on that track. Or at the end of the game, if you moved up a certain amount of those tracks, you're going to get 5 points per track that you have moved up. Also, when you place one of your rides, you might be placing it over a symbol that's also going to give you a bonus on one of those tracks. And so this game is about getting these different rides in there, to be able to move up these tracks to outscore your opponents. The rides are worth points. Also, you can, at the end of each round, choose different rides to advertise, which is going to give you some victory points as well. And so there's a bunch of different routes that you can take, things you can focus on to try and score the most points. Of course, the biggest thing is getting those rides into your park, because those are going to give you the opportunities to move up your tracks as well as to be able to advertise and get points, plus they're worth points at the end. And so it's a nice puzzle game that I really enjoy. Okay, on day 7 we played Arboretum and the Isle of Cats. Now the Isle of Cats has been a family favorite since we got it. I rated a 10 out of 10. It's my favorite polyomino game. We played the family mode, which is a simpler mode where you're basically just going around and picking up a cat, drafting it, and putting it onto your board, and trying to fill up space on your board, as well as combine same colored cats together to form families to score points that way. You get a couple cards at the beginning of the game that are your lesson cards that give you bonus points for fulfilling certain criteria. And so it's not a whole lot to focus on. And I really enjoy, especially when we get to play the fuller version of it, where we are having to focus on a lot more. It's a lot more complex. But even the family mode is a lot of fun as you're trying to puzzle out how to fit these cats on your board to most optimize your point scoring, to try and fill up spaces so you don't lose points for having unfilled rooms. You're always going to have at least probably one unfilled room. I mean, you can fill up the board. It happens occasionally, but usually you're going to have at least that one big room unfilled. And then sometimes you're going to have 2 or 3 rooms unfilled, even when you're trying to be efficient. And you're trying to cover up rats, which give you negative points if they are uncovered at the end of the game. And so it's a simple game. Enjoy it. It's great to puzzle out how to best get everything in there. Now the other game that my wife and I played is Arboretum. Now this game is one that we've only played twice, so I'm a little bit fuzzy on my rating of this game so far. Tentatively, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. There's part of me that wants to rate it a little bit lower than that, but then part of me is also like, that's probably just because I'm not used to it yet. I haven't figured it all out. And so right now I'm just going to say a 7 out of 10. That may go down, that may even go up. But basically this is a fairly simple concept of a game. On each turn you are going to draw 2 cards. They can either be from the face down pile, or they can be from the face up discard piles of you or your opponent. And so you're going to draw 2 cards and you're going to play one into your Arboretum. It can be one that's already in your hand or one of the ones you drew. And then you are going to discard a card to your discard pile. And you have to be kind of careful that you're not discarding cards that your opponent's going to want, as well as you want to keep certain cards in your hand for stopping your opponent from being able to score, as well as for you to be able to score. And so there's this lot of trying to figure things out as to what's optimal for you to do. You can only have 7 cards in your hand at the end of each turn. And some of those you're going to want to keep to be able to play. Some of those you're going to be able to keep them from being in your opponent's hand, and to eventually at the end have those to hopefully keep your opponent from scoring. And then some of them you're going to want to hold on to in your hand so that you can be able to score the cards you're playing down. Because basically what's going to happen at the end of the game, for the trees that you have in your Arboretum that take a path from lowest to highest, and they don't have to necessarily all be the same tree type along the way, although you get bonus points if they're the same tree type. You have to have the first and last one be the same tree type, but in between they can be different. If they start with a 1, you get an extra point. If they end with an 8, you get an extra 2 points. And so there's all these different types of things to think about in getting those out. But another big thing you have to think about is you have to have the highest sum of that type of card in your hand at the end of the game to even be able to score the points for it. And so one thing that I'm a little iffy on about this game is that part of the game, because we're not big Take That fans. If there's a little bit of Take That in games, that's fine, but this almost kind of seems a little bit cruel at times when you go ahead and you might just hoard a couple cards that have nothing to do with what you're trying to score, just because you know your opponent's going after that and they're going all out, putting all their cards in that style in there just about. And you're like, well, I can hold on to these cards even though I don't need to use them because it'll keep them from scoring. And also, if you are both playing down the same type of trees, well then whoever manages to hold on to the most of that sum-wise in their hand is going to be able to score all those points. You get nothing for coming in second place there. And so there's a lot of interaction as far as that goes. And some people may really enjoy that, and I can see the puzzle in that, and I do somewhat enjoy that puzzle, but at the same time, it is a little mean at times. And so whether I'm going to continue to rate this a 7 or it's going to drop, or maybe even go up as I learn to enjoy the aspect of the game. I don't know. Anyway, that's the other one that we played, Arboretum. So these are the 14 games we played this week from our Advent calendar as part of our 25 games of Christmas, or should I even say 50 games if we include all the family games there. I hope you've enjoyed my little mini reviews of these games, and check back next week for the next games that we played. As always, have a great week.